Hi, I'm Aiden Wickman. I am a fourth grade teacher in downtown Rochester, New York. In this video, I will be discussing how the null curriculum influences and reinforces discrimination against minoritized groups in the United States. When the Founding Fathers drafted the Declaration of Independence, they envisioned the country to be a land where all men are created equal. But in the lens of sociology, these truths are not quite realized. In this video essay, I plan on commenting on two marginalized and minoritized groups in the United States, the Asian American community and the Native American Indian community. I will not be showing an exhaustive list of samples of inequality for these groups, but because I have an obsession with giving examples for my claims, here is a very short list of inequalities for these two groups, along with some further readings. Racism towards Asian Americans is tied closely with the history of the United States. Because of a surge of Chinese immigrants in the 1850s, Americans at the time were fearful of the invasion of Chinese workers and sparked the Yellow Peril. 1882 saw the passing of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which prohibited Chinese labor immigration for 10 years. Asian Americans experience extreme racism, especially in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. In some parts of the United States, 8 in 10 Asian Americans fear that they will become victims of racism-based violence. Historically and presently, the characterization of Native American Indians is prevalent in popular culture. Native American Indians suffer abhorrent discrimination in the United States through lack of funds, the reduction of federally protected native land, and inadequate access to the bare necessities of life. These sources paint the ideal person in the United States as a rich, straight, white man, and every other aspect that is not that is below on the social hierarchy. So the null curriculum is a part of a three-pronged view of curricula taught in schools, first described by Eisner. The three curricula all schools teach are as follows. The explicit curriculum, which is the determined goals and objectives explicitly set by schools. The implicit curriculum, which are the soft skills, or what is taught but not assessed. This includes things like punctuality, compliant behavior in a professional setting, stuff like that. The third, the null curriculum, is where we'll be focusing our attention. The null curriculum is what is not taught in schools. For example, most schools do not teach courses on digital citizenship, mindfulness, or first aid. If any of these schools do teach these courses, they are electives and are left out of the main curriculum. Whether schools is the correct place to teach these skills is a debate that's warranted, but that isn't the focus of this video. In order to keep focus, it's simply important that you know what null curriculum is. In the United States, both Asian Americans and Native Americans are part of the null curriculum. In other words, these cultures and their histories are missing from the curriculum in the United States. Schools across the United States do not teach Asian American history. If there is any mention of history, it's largely the suffering of Japanese Americans in internment camps in World War II. In schools, Asian Americans were poorly represented at best and subject to racist caricatures at worst. Elementary school classrooms celebrate cultural holidays such as the Lunar New Year, but are always introduced by the teacher. It's never written in the curriculum. Why is it a privilege if a child has a culturally relevant teacher? Shouldn't every child be promised to learn about their heritage, the same way white students learn about colonial America? The fact that this information isn't taught in schools is one of the reasons why we have inequality. If you don't think about non-white people, it's like they don't exist. Most states have their curriculum online and freely available to view. In one example, New York State, 4th grade social studies, The social studies curriculum's second unit, after New York State geography, is the history of the Haudenosaunee peoples and how they lived. The third unit is the Manhattan Purchase and colonial life in New York State. There are two pretty glaring flaws with this unit. First, the gap in time that spans hundreds of years is full of discrimination and theft of the Haudenosaunee peoples. And second, the curriculum keeps using the past tense when talking about the Haudenosaunee people, which are very much still alive and successfully keeping up their traditions. The curriculum of schools is written by the ruling class. The removal of certain cultures from the curriculum may be a byproduct of institutionalized racism and discrimination. But why hasn't it been fixed? One reason is that admitting hurt leads to the expectation of doing something to improve the situation, which in the American psyche is extremely challenging. And even worse, from America's view, fixing hurt could possibly lead to a disruption of the economic status quo. So it's easiest to keep the null curriculum the way it is now. The use of the null curriculum in the United States reinforces and influences social discrimination. As with so many topics that cover injustice, there is rarely one singular answer. The null curriculum is something that has to definitionally exist in schools. It's impossible to teach everything all of the time. But perhaps moving forward, we as Americans can be more cognizant of what we are leaving out of our classroom. Thank you for watching.